The next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 3008. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 3008, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to liquor, the first engrossment.
Representative Stevenson, would you like to put the House language in the bill before you present it?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Stevenson moves to amend Senate File number 3008, the first engrossment, as follows. The amendment is coded DEA 2767.
All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The liquor bill is here. I know a lot of people in this chamber have been waiting a very long time for this bill, and I'm really proud to bring it to you today. You know, over the last several years, the landscape of the alcohol industry here in Minnesota has changed dramatically. The craft movement has introduced hundreds of new businesses in all corners of the state. Minnesotans value those businesses. We enjoy spending time at craft breweries on a nice summer evening or a specialty cocktail at a local distillery on date night. Minnesotans want to see those businesses grow and prosper and are interested in seeing barriers go away. At the same time, the businesses that constituted the liquor industry before the craft boom are also valued members of our community. These businesses provide good, well-paying jobs, and the systems and laws that sometimes puzzle the average person often have important policy justifications rooted in consumer protection, consumer choice, and public safety. But Minnesota's liquor laws are not written in the stars. Just because they are doesn't mean that they should forever be. Our job in the legislature is to constantly review the laws, determine if they're serving the best interests of the people of Minnesota, and make changes as they're appropriate. And I think in a number of areas we could be doing better. We can have laws that support local breweries and distilleries while still protecting the safety of consumers and encouraging a competitive and robust marketplace. We can have good union jobs and a strong craft industry. And towards the end of the last session, I said on the House floor that I wanted to see a significant liquor bill pass in 2022. And since session adjourned at the end of June, I have been working hard to make that happen. I've been meeting with people who are involved in the liquor industry at all levels, producers big and small, distributors, retailers, trade groups, regulators. I've been all over the state, from Ely to New Ulm, from Rochester to Bemidji, visiting businesses of all shapes and sizes. In October of last year in the Commerce Committee, we had a comprehensive liquor bill hearing. We actually heard 30+ liquor bills that day. Thank you to the members of the Commerce Committee for sitting through that very long hearing. We threw the doors open. We took a comprehensive approach. The bill on the floor today is a culmination of all of the work of those committee members, myself, and our great staff, and I'm really proud of it. So what does this bill do? This bill frees the growler. It ends the absurdity of Minnesota being the home to the only 5 breweries in the country that can't sell off-sale directly to their consumers in their tap rooms. It also allows broad flexibility to small craft brewers and distillers all across the state to sell different package sizes to consumers. After passage of this bill, you'll be able to go to your favorite local brewery and buy a 6-pack, and you'll be able to go to your favorite local distillery and buy a 750 milliliter bottle of craft spirits. It also eliminates the cap on cocktail rooms, which allows distilleries to grow without fear of losing that amenity. Importantly, it also addresses the uncertainty in our state right now surrounding the future of regulation of the liquor wholesaling industry by reforming the Coleman Act in a very important way and ensuring competition and a good, robust market in liquor distribution. That's a very important provision related to the Coleman Act. This is also a very bipartisan bill. In fact, almost half of the 20 provisions that in this bill were authored by Republicans, and several of the provisions authored by Democrats right now were authored by Republicans in previous years. So this is not a partisan bill. I want to thank a lot of the members who contributed and also our great staff who worked on this bill, among them Chris Klayman from House Research, Ashley Eng from House Fiscal, and of course, I've said positive words about him on this floor in the past, but I would be remiss if I didn't thank Simon Brown, our committee administrator, yet again for his excellent work. And with that, Madam Speaker, I know there are some amendments.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Stevenson moves to amend Senate File Number 3008, the first and Grossman as amended. The amendment is coded A5.
Representative Stevenson, to your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a simple amendment that deletes a provision offered by Representative Hornstein. I understand that the project is no longer wanting to move forward with this particular amendment, so we're taking it out of the bill.
Discussion to the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no.
No.
The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Franzen moves to amend Senate File Number 3008, the first and Grossman as amended. The amendment is coded A9.
The member from Douglas, Representative Franzen.
Madam Speaker and members, so the A9 permits the city of Alexandria, which is the city that is easy to get to and hard to leave, very true, to issue a wine and strong beer license for its North American Hockey League events at the Runestone Community Center, where Representative Paul Anderson is blessed to represent the actual facility, the Runestone Community Center. I have the parking lot. So I have talked to the bill author, and he has agreed to take this as a friendly amendment. So thank you for your support.
Further discussion. Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Franzen. That's correct. This is a friendly amendment. I would urge members to vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Munson moves to amend Senate File Number 3008, the first and Grossman as amended. The amendment is coded A6.
The member from Blue Earth, Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is an amendment for the city of Madelia, also known as the Pride of the Prairie, and the pheasant capital of the world, or at least pheasant capital of the United States, one of those two. We have in a small town of Madelia on Main Street, which suffered a devastating fire a few years ago and has been rebuilt. We had a wine cafe open, and their business model was to sell wine and to be able to sell bottles of wine. The City Council was excited about this business. The Economic Development Council was excited about bringing this new business to town to employ people and to bring jobs and to be able to sell wine. And even though the City Council approves it, there's a provision in our state law that prohibits a city with a municipal liquor store from issuing off-sale permits to other stores. So the City Council asked for this legislation, and in your email, you have a letter from all the City Council members asking for permission to issue liquor licenses to other businesses in the city. And that's what this amendment does. It simply allows local control. Now, many members here have municipal liquor stores, but we also have city councils that would like to offer this to grow businesses in their community. So this is a simple amendment that gives the city the authority to issue an off-sale permit to a business in their city. Local control and freedom. Thank you, members. I encourage you to vote yes.
Discussion to the amendment. Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's kind of fun to learn a little bit about all the different places around the state here, Alexandria and Madelia, the various sayings. I unfortunately have to ask members to vote against the Munson amendment. This is a bill that is a compromise measure, as I mentioned, with buy-in from stakeholders, but this amendment unfortunately has some opposition. And I would say that, you know, we have a three-tiered system in Minnesota, as many people are aware, and this bill violates that three-tiered system, and so I would ask members to vote no on this amendment.
Further discussion. Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Stevenson, there is opposition to this bill, but it's not from the stakeholders, it's not from the business owner, not from the City Council, not from the Economic Development Council. It shouldn't be from the legislature. The opposition actually comes from a group called the Minnesota Municipal Beverage Association. This is a private lobbying group that's paid by the city to lobby on their behalf. Well, the city doesn't want this. They don't want this blockage. They want the freedom to issue liquor licenses. So here we have a lobbying group, which is actually one of the most dangerous lobbyists out there, a lobbyist that lobbies for government. Okay, we have an issue in the state of Minnesota. In 2019, we had over $10 million of taxpayer money being paid to private lobbying organizations to lobby government. Government lobbying government for more government. Nobody else sees that as dangerous here. This is the only opposition to this bill, the lobbying group. They don't want to offer the groups that they represent freedom. So it's disappointing. I would encourage members to vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
Aye.
No.
The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
New Brindley moves to amend Senate File Number 3008, the first engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A11.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This amendment would remove the Liquor Regulation Advisory Council from the bill. I think that there are a lot of provisions, as Representative Stevenson said, there are a lot of provisions that are bipartisan that members really like in this bill and that members really want to vote for. But there is a glaring problem with this bill that really does need to be remedied for this to move forward. So this Liquor Regulation Advisory Council, there are a number of problems with the council itself. And frankly, these questions probably could have been answered had this appropriately come before the State Government Committee. We are creating a new advisory council. This bill should have come before the State Government Committee where these questions could have been answered. It did not. That is the committee of jurisdiction where we deal with things like advisory councils. But when I look at the language itself, I just want to draw a couple of things to your attention with the language and the support. First and foremost, we have quite a few advisory councils in the state set up through legislation, things like the LCCMR Council. And their charge is to make decisions that are in the best interest of the environment. We've got the Workers' Compensation Advisory Council. Their charge is to work in the best interest of workers. We've got lots of different councils that function this way. And they're all there. They all exist to support entities outside of themselves. This commission, the Liquor Regulation Advisory Council, this council will function very, very differently. And I want to be very clear, while all of these other provisions, while all of these other councils function and the members of the council work in the best interest of others, this council is set up to work in the best interest of itself. This is a council set up with self-interest in mind as opposed to the interest of others. That is clearly a glaring problem with the council itself. There are obvious problems, like there is an executive director position in the language, but there is no appropriation, and the fiscal note assumes no cost for an executive director, which if you have served on the State Government Committee, you would know that that doesn't happen. Our state departments do not take on additional work and certainly additional staff without additional funding. So that is certainly a problem. I would also suggest that this is going to be binding. What happens with this advisory council is going to be binding, whether you like it or not, whether you want it to be or not, whether that's your intention or not. This is going to be binding. And again, it's going to be binding in the self-interest of the council members. It's going to be binding in the self-interest of the council members. And I get it. I get it. We are passing a liquor bill here on the House floor today, presumably. I assume the Democrats have the votes to pass this. We are passing a liquor bill off the House floor today, and I get it. That is very difficult to do. That's very hard to do. But we were elected to do hard things. We were elected to do hard things, and this commission is set up for mutually assured destruction, to make sure that nothing moves forward in the future. I want to call to your attention, members should have been emailed a few documents, and they are certainly available up front, but I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. One is a letter from the Minnesota Service Station and Convenience Store Association, and they say their position is that this commission, or this council, further politicizes liquor regulation in Minnesota and removes future liquor discussions from Minnesota's elected legislators where it belongs. And that is 100% accurate. By creating this council, we are now abdicating our authority, we are abdicating our responsibility to deal with these issues legislatively. And we are moving it to a council where it will further politicize liquor regulation in Minnesota. I also want to give you a little history on this provision that I think is really important that people know about as they vote today, both on this amendment and on the final passage of the bill. I will call your attention to another letter that was emailed out. It's up front if you don't have it. This one is from a couple of wine and spirits distributors in the state. And they say that this bill in its current form hinges on a 5-year so-called Peace in the Valley agreement that has been negotiated by certain liquor industry trade associations. We want to voice our opposition to the legislation and reject any notion that the association has signed off on such agreement. The Star Tribune editorial board said this. They point out that how the legal agreements that require active opposition to any future liquor changes seem designed to force unanimity, and that is just wrong. That's from the Star Tribune editorial board. That is just wrong. So finally, I would draw your attention to an agreement that was sent out. So each of you should have access to this agreement. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like this. This is an agreement that has been created to bind parties on how they will behave in the future. First, it says that parties will not oppose the provisions in this bill. So they are bound to support the provisions in this bill, including this advisory council that is specifically laid out in this agreement. And most alarmingly, let's make sure that I've got my pages in order here. While it does say that each party may take an individual decision on their support, neutrality, or opposition to the Coleman Act, that's incredibly gracious in the language. That was very gracious. But I want to point out in this agreement, numbers 14 and 15 that everyone should be incredibly concerned about. And what this does is it applies to the current legislative session and any subsequent sessions through 27 and 28. So this is a 5-year agreement, which coincidentally lines up perfectly with the 5-year terms laid out in the council in the bill language. So it lines up perfectly, that 5 years. And it says the parties agree to actively and publicly oppose any proposal to amend Minnesota's statutes or regulations governing or otherwise related to alcoholic beverages. So they must actively and publicly oppose any new proposals regarding liquor in the state of Minnesota. The parties agree to actively lobby against and oppose any such proposals and testify in legislative hearings. We are literally binding parties to work in opposition of their self-interest. That's what this does. For the sake of clarity and not to limit the foregoing, this active and public opposition includes any legislation regarding the sale of alcohol in convenience and grocery stores. So while this bill does not affect the sale of alcohol in grocery stores and convenience stores, this bill will prohibit that discussion for the next 5 years, as is laid out in this agreement. It says during the term, that 5-year term that coincides with the 5-year terms of the council members in the bill, it says any party to this agreement can propose an amendment or rule to change to Minnesota liquor laws to other parties of the agreement. So they can't take those potential changes to us as legislators. They are only allowed to take them to other parties involved in the agreement. That's it. They cannot come to us as legislators. They are only allowed to take this to other parties to the agreement. And again, of course, this lines up perfectly with this new Liquor Regulation Advisory Council. This has been floating around, this agreement, this contract has been floating around. I was told today that people are not signing it. It's just a handshake agreement. That's an agreement. This is mob boss level DFL politics like we haven't seen in a long time in this state. This is Zach Stevenson's good old boys club that he's setting up here to deal with liquor laws in the state of Minnesota. And I would encourage members to vote yes on this amendment.
To achieve the result already achieved, Representative New Brindley has taken her seat.
Just a reminder, members, that we are discussing the A11 Amendment Discussion. Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And to speak to the amendment, first of all, I will ask members to vote no on the amendment. What this provision in the bill does is create a liquor advisory council that consists of people representing each of the 3 tiers that we have in Minnesota. It brings them together, as Representative New Brindley mentioned, in a manner similar to other advisory councils, and we have many of them in Minnesota, to provide guidance to us about what is often a very obscure and in-the-weeds area of law. I have often observed that no one runs for the Minnesota House to shape our state's liquor laws. That's usually not why people do this. We come here for many reasons, and it's not to say that liquor isn't important, but that's usually not the motivating factor. And so we have a lot that we can learn about these oftentimes hard to understand regulations from the people who actually have to work in the space. The decisions of the Liquor Advisory Council are not binding, despite what Representative New Brindley was articulating. There is nothing in the bill that says they are binding. They are recommendations. And in fact, this legislature routinely does not follow the recommendations of advisory councils. So I don't know why this one would be any different than the others. I find it odd to hear Representative New Brindley complain that there's not an appropriation for the executive director. It's unusual to hear Republicans complain about us not spending money on government staff, but we'll take that. I understand that this provision is not everyone's favorite provision in the bill. It's not nearly as fun as freeing the growler. I mean, I get that. But that's the nature of compromise. No one is thrilled with every provision in the bill. It all hangs together to get an agreement to do something that people have been trying to do around this place for a long, long time. If you don't like this provision, I understand that. I ask you to consider it in balance of the whole bill and the whole compromise and decide whether or not on balance you feel like it is a good deal for the people that you represent and whether they want you to do this, because it is part of a broader compromise. I do want to speak very briefly about the agreement that Representative New Brindley shared with the body, which I will point out is not in the bill. There is nothing in the bill about this agreement. Nothing. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm sure Representative New Brindley will pop up and point out page and line where it references this agreement or 5 years of anything in the bill. It does not. Representative New Brindley said that we are binding parties. We are doing nothing. This is not an agreement that the legislature has signed or brought or drafted. I have signed nothing. No one has signed anything. I haven't shook any hands or agreed to anything on that. It can't, first of all, it can't be done. We can't bind a future legislature. I may not be here in a few months. That would be good news for a lot of you, I think, if that happens, but that's certainly not what I'm hoping for. But I can't bind a future legislature. We can't bind a future legislature. People can decide to talk about whatever they want to talk about, which is why it is frankly absurd to say that this bill prohibits a discussion. That's absurd. The agreement's not in the bill. The discussion can continue. In fact, I will go all the way back to the amendment and say that one thing that I heard very consistently when I traveled across the state having a lot of conversations from stakeholders in the craft space, craft breweries, craft distilleries, is that they were very frustrated that people in the traditional three-tier system wouldn't come to the table to even have a discussion. That decisions were being made behind closed doors and they weren't a part of it. Guess what the Liquor Advisory Council does, guys? It creates a table that the craft people are at alongside the legacy people and forces them to meet in public to talk about ideas that are brought to the table. It does exactly what they have been asking for. If you want a transparent discussion about liquor, this is it. This is what has been asked for. And we can absolutely have discussions about any provision in here. Look at the language of the bill, read the bill. There's nothing in there limiting what can be discussed. So this is a compromise, and I ask for a no vote on the amendment.
The member from Otter Tail, Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the New Brindley amendment. I think as we look at this Liquor Regulation Advisory Council, it is entirely made up of private interests looking out for private interests, and unfortunately we don't see the public interest represented. For example, when we're thinking about liquor regulation, we would think that public health would be an important consideration. There's no member from the public health community on this council. Secondly, public safety. This is an intoxicating substance. There's no representative from the public safety community on this advisory council. And even, Madam Speaker, even if those roles were on this advisory council, I think as a legislature, we ought to take pride in the work that we do, that our committees do. This 12-person council is all appointed by the governor to review and recommend legislative changes to the legislature. And I think, looking at this session, we had hearings, we met with interested parties as this liquor bill came together, and this is work that we can do as a legislature without the council, and so it asks support for the new Brindley Amendment.
Further discussion. The author of the amendment, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Representative Rasmussen, actually. You know, I didn't actually address that in my comments, but not only is there no member from the public safety community, there's no member representing public health interests, there's also just no member of the public. Again, this is a very unique council in that it is entirely self-interested. There is no member of this council to represent the interests of Minnesotans. It is exclusively made up of industry representatives who are worried about themselves, not us as Minnesotans. Again, that makes this a very unique council. And I love it. Representative Stevenson chose his words very carefully because it's true, the agreement is not in the bill. It's not in the bill. The bill doesn't prohibit discussion. That's true. But the agreement sure does. The agreement sure does. And like I said, from two different people today, I heard, yep, no signing the agreement, but there's just a handshake deal on it. So you can pretend all you want that it doesn't exist, that it's not real. It is. It is real. You all have a copy of it to take a look. And I would encourage you to do so before you vote on this bill. And also this idea that it wouldn't be binding. Of course it's going to be binding. That's how these councils work. If we have a workers' comp issue come before us, it's because the Workers' Comp Advisory Council agreed on it. That's how it works. That's how it works. Again, you know, we can't be more clear on this kind of language and what we are doing through legislation here. This is a bastardization of the process. This is ugly. This is ugly politics. This is about as ugly as it gets. And like I said, we haven't seen this in a long time. I think particularly in Minnesota, we have a good reputation actually for how we do politics. But not this. This absolutely, I'm sorry, but the characterization was accurate. This is mob boss level politics. Something surely only a lawyer and politician could come up with. I would support this amendment.
There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended.
Third reading, Senate File Number 3008, as amended.
Third reading as amendment. Discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Olson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. And I'm really excited to speak in support of the bill before us today. And first of all, I just want to say a big thank you to Chair Stevenson for all of the work he did. I know he was in my district a lot during the interim meeting with all of the stakeholders and just really worked so hard on a compromise and really lived up to the word when he had spoke on the House floor saying that we would have a liquor bill and he would work towards compromise. And so just a debt of gratitude to finally be here today. And I'm speaking in support of this because I have been a champion of a number of the provisions that are before us because of the district I represent. I never thought I would work on liquor when I came into the legislature either, but this is something that is a very important part of my district. We have seen a revitalization of our neighborhoods. We have seen tourism coming into West Duluth. We have just seen a big burst in growth of things because of the craft industry. And so for those of you that have been to Canal Park or you've been to Lincoln Park, You know a lot of these businesses, and so they have been strong advocates for changing our liquor laws so that they continue to grow and thrive and employ people right from the heart of the district in their businesses. So this is a big deal, and one of the brewers in my district said to me, well, you know, it's not everything we wanted. It's like a carrot cake without frosting. I'm not going to eat it, but it would be sure better if it had frosting. So that's very much the art of compromise and what this bill is about. It's not everything that was in the Drink Local package, but it certainly is a huge step forward to really modernize our laws that had really stymied the growth of so many small businesses in my district and just really stymied their voices. And with that, I really do want to just lift up those, you know, I've been in the legislature for 6 years, and there have been strong voices that have been working on this and pushing it to say that, you know, we can't walk away from finding something, and really came to the table time and time again, and even through frustration and even through challenges, really continue to bring their voices, continue to advocate, continue to be bold. And so I really believe that we're at a watershed moment with changing a lot of these laws because of those groups that continue to advocate and say that it was unacceptable not to find something. And so I just want to say appreciation both to Chair Stevenson, but more appreciation too for those voices of the breweries and distilleries, microbreweries and distilleries in my district who really continue to beat the drum on this issue year after year, even when it felt like such an uphill climb. So I am proudly a yes vote on this. I think this makes a huge impact across our state, and just thank you to everybody who worked on it.
The member from Wright, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just have a quick question for the bill author.
He will yield. Go ahead, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Chair Stevenson. I appreciate the robust discussion on the council. Just a quick question. I'm looking at your DE amendment on line 13.13 in regards to the makeup of the council. It says the Speaker of the House and the Minority Leader of the House of Representatives shall each appoint a caucus member as a liaison to the council. My question is just a question of clarification. We have at least 2 members in the body here that are a caucus of 1. So when it says the minority leader shall appoint, how could you just provide clarification on which minority caucus that's referring to?
Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Representative Lucero, for the question. I think that the minority leader is usually the leader of the largest minority in the body, so I believe it would refer, in this case, to Leader Dowd.
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And if he would, okay, and I appreciate that answer. And if he would just yield for one more question then.
He will. Go ahead, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And so in the present scenario, the current makeup of the present legislature, does that mean there are at least 2 members of this body that would be absolutely excluded then from being a member of this council?
Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lucero, no, because it doesn't say that the Speaker and the minority leader can't appoint whoever they choose from the body. So if the minority leader or the Speaker wanted to choose one of the independent members, they certainly could do that.
Representative Lucero.
That's all I have. Thank you for the clarification.
I recognize the member from Wabasha, Representative Drzkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I concur with Representative New Brindley on her amendment. I read the bill. Interestingly enough, members, and this wasn't covered in the discussion prior to third reading, but as we look at the structure of this, really kind of the codification of the cartel in the executive branch in the bill, what we see here is that I'm just going to read it. The meetings of the council are subject to the state's open meeting law, Chapter 13D, except each group described in Subdivision 1 may meet in separate closed caucuses for the purpose of deliberation on matters before the council. So members, we have 3 caucuses in the cartel group that's codified in the bill that's going to abdicate our responsibility and make the executive branch one increment stronger than it is already relative to the legislative branch. I think we should all be concerned about that. We talked about that with the government shutdown and the abdication of responsibility that happened. We are doing the same thing in an increment here, whether it was acknowledged earlier by the advocates of this provision or not. We are making the executive branch stronger, abdicating our responsibility to them, and that is not, members, what the people who elected each and every one of us here expected when they sent us here. Now, in the language I just read, each of them are allowed to caucus outside of the open meeting law. So they can have, so the retailers, the wholesalers, and who was the third group in the cartel? And the manufacturers, and each of their groups in here get to caucus by themselves. So they'll be having this council meeting, and they'll go to caucus and have private discussions that the public can't hear in that. Does that sound like a legislature? Are these Democrat caucuses and Republicans? Are they the Democrats, the Republicans, and the independents, Representative Stevenson? Or who are these? I'm curious. This, members, is not a good design for the future of Minnesota. And this is headed potentially to be enacted into law. I find that very troubling. Madam Speaker, would the author of the bill yield?
He will. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Stevenson, Representative New Brindley read a memo or a letter or an agreement that I haven't seen, but she did a good job describing it. Do you agree that there should be no agreement for 5 years between the three members of the cartel? No changes?
Representative Stevenson.
Well, Representative Drazkowski, I wouldn't presume to tell groups that are outside of the Capitol who have the right under the First Amendment to associate with each other and discuss what they want, tell them what to do. That's not what this bill does. That's not what I would ever feign to do. If they want to talk and have those discussions, that is their First Amendment right.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Stevenson. Well, I agree with the First Amendment right part. Members, I will go back. I haven't looked. I'd encourage members of the public to scrutinize the campaign finance reports of every member of the Commerce Committee, because I'll tell you this, in past years, these members of this cartel have been very active, legally for them to do, Madam Speaker, very legal for them to do, but very, very, very active funding the campaigns of members of the Commerce Committee.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
State your point of order.
Madam Speaker, frustration with a bill does not allow a member to impugn the motives of members or their reasons for bringing a bill forward or not bringing a bill forward. You wouldn't want that to be done to you, and it is not permissible to do it to anybody else in this House. Representative Drazkowski is out of order.
I would just remind the body that it is not the person, but the measure that is subject of the debate, and it is not allowable to arraign the motives of a member. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Winkler. Matter of fact, Representative Winkler, I wasn't talking about any members here. I was talking about the efforts of these three distinct, very powerful groups in their efforts to influence this body. And they've done it over and over again, year after year that I have been here. I have seen it in the past firsthand. I have no idea what they have done this year or last year. I haven't looked at those records. But I would encourage the public to be very, very conscious of this. If you're interested in liquor issues, these three components of the cartel are very active trying to influence things here at the Capitol. And members, Madam Speaker, we're seeing that influence actually coming in the form of legislation that gives them their whole brand new table, as the author pointed it out, their own brand new table in the executive branch. And it's in the bill. They're all going to get to sit now in the executive branch and bring forward something that has some sort of hush-hush agreement, as Representative New Brindley pointed out in her discussion of a memo that I don't know if it was shared widely or was leaked or how it got here. I haven't seen it yet. But this, members, citizens of Minnesota, is very, very, very troubling. For that alone, I'm opposed to this bill, Madam Speaker. But I'd also like to talk about and bring to note to members some other elements of the bill. If you look at the direct shipments of wine section in the bill, now we're on pages 18 and 19 and 20 of the bill. We create brand new licensing requirements. And Madam Speaker, members, I understand the discussion around this that took place in the Commerce Committee, other committees afterwards, and maybe even in the House earlier today. The discussion was, well, this is one area where you've got one group of people producing and shipping wine who aren't taxed, and you got other group that isn't, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the tax on a portion of the wine shippers throughout this country to take more money, more tax money, raise taxes, and bring more tax money into the state of Minnesota. Madam Speaker, we have a $9.2 billion surplus. And we are creating policy in this bill that is going to increase revenue, increase taxation of wine shippers, and collect even more money. Members, this is the wrong solution, the wrong direction. Madam Speaker, would the author yield again?
He will. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Stevenson, have you or anybody else around the discussions of this bill even considered maybe decreasing or getting rid of a tax on something? Maybe get a tax, get rid of the tax on wine shipments and wine wholesaling overall?
Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Drazkowski, you know, Representative Katiza-Watun is the author of that bill. This year, it's been carried, I believe, by other members in the past. This is one of those ideas that's been kicking around for a while, and I imagine that a variety of approaches have been considered over the time that this bill has pending, which is one of the things that's frustrating for people around liquor, is that things seem to be kicking around for year after year without anything getting done. I think that this bill is important. It recognizes the reality on the ground around the way people are ordering wine these days, and make sure that there's a fair and equal system around both sides of the issue there.
Representative Drazkowski.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, Representative Stevenson, you validated what I was hearing. The motivation behind this direct wine shipment thing seems to be that people want different elements of the industry, however narrowly defined in this particular area, treated equally. Nobody can argue with that. But what is the propensity of the bill that we see coming forward, members? Madam Speaker, members of the public, we have a $9.2 billion surplus, and this bill aims to collect more tax money from people. We've got too much money being collected, members, and this bill's going to collect even more. It would have been easy enough to repeal the tax on the people who were being taxed too much relative to the other group. Repeal that tax. I'm sure we would have still had many, many billions of dollars left, members, Madam Speaker. I am troubled that this is the approach that is taken in this bill. But I go on in the licensing requirements. A direct ship winery must apply to the commissioner for a direct ship license. So members, now they got to get a license in order to ship wine to Minnesota. In addition to that, if that's not good enough, we create a government big enough to go after the common carriers. So if you look at page 20 of the bill, each common carrier that contracts with a winery under section 348.417 for delivery of wine into the state must file with the commissioner a monthly report of known wine shipments made by the carrier. We got the wine tax police out there now in the bill, and we're going to chase after truck drivers and say, show us your records. We want to see how many bottles you shipped. That's what's in the bill, members. Read page 20. We could have easily done this much more differently, members, Madam Speaker, by simply getting rid of the tax. But this instead increases the tax overall and creates a whole bunch more government. We're going the wrong direction, members, Madam Speaker. Please vote no on this bill. Let's preserve at least some element of freedom for the fine people in Minnesota that are struggling under the oppressive taxation and regulation that this huge government is bearing upon them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That was a fun act to follow. Regarding the council, folks have heard me talk about for years about the problem with us moving a lot of these provisions forward. A lot of us have been working on this for many years and in a bipartisan way. And, you know, I've talked a lot about what's wrong with any setup where a couple of guys in a room get to make the decisions for our state. And the way that we push back against that is actually to have a bill before us that each of us as elected officials gets to vote on. I also have news, members. You don't actually have to care what lobbyists think. I've been really clear about that when it comes to liquor issues for years, and they've probably said some not nice, they've probably talked motives about me, and I don't care. And neither do you. You don't have to care either. You don't have to care what lobbyists think about this bill. You don't have to care about what they think moving forward. And unlike maybe you don't want me to come back either, but I'm definitely going to be back here next year, and I definitely don't care about any agreements made by lobbyists in rooms in this building or otherwise. So if there are things that we need to change moving forward, we will still work on those. And I think as others have said, that, you know, this isn't a perfect bill. You know, a provision I've been working on since day one when I got here for a business in my community that's a unique business that's both a brewery and a distillery in the same space. You know, the liquor regulations have hurt them as a small business, and I wish that was included, and it's not. But that's okay, we'll keep working on it, and I know that that's what I'm gonna do as an elected official. You know, other provisions I do have to give a shout out for my small, but another provision that is gonna help some small businesses, as many who maybe want to benefit from it, but it's 5 o'clock somewhere provision so that you can enjoy being at your local bar during the World Cup, no matter when the local time in Central Standard Time is occurring, despite future games in the next couple of years in the World Cup will be in Qatar and in New Zealand and Australia. So whatever time of day it is on the other side of the planet, we'll still be able to enjoy a beer together while we watch some soccer. And I also didn't think that I would ever be excited about a Representative Dowd provision, but you're gonna be able to buy your lemons and limes at the liquor store, so your Moscow Mules and your gin and tonics are going to be better. You're going to only have to make one stop now. So, you know, I think there's a lot of good things in here, and the other thing I really want to make sure that we recognize is, you know, we've given ourselves credit for getting this bill done, and I do give a shout out for sure to Chair Stevenson for putting in the work and getting us this bill that we're actually talking about in public on the House floor today. But I mostly want to give a shout out to our small businesses and the people who love those small businesses, because the Free the Growler movement, our Minnesota craft brewers, our distillers, all those folks who've been sending us emails and postcards and stopping us when we're at those places, that's the reason this is before us. If we didn't have actual people lobbying to get some changes done, we wouldn't have this bill before us. And I do really want to give a shout out to those people. As much as I know I had the experience where I'd be out door knocking, and I'd always ask people, what's the thing that you care about? And they would say, oh, I want to be able to buy a growler when I go to Castle Danger. And as much as maybe their spouse was rolling their eyes when they told me that was a thing that they were worried about, the reality is it does impact people. They do notice, and I think it also gets to whether folks can trust that their government is working on things that they care about. And so, again, it's not a perfect bill, but it's a good bill, and it's a definite step forward that's going to help a lot of small businesses in our state. And I will proudly push that green button, and I encourage other folks to do the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Stevenson, and every member who contributed to this bill. This bill is a very big deal for the people of 60A. We are home to 13 craft breweries. We're home to 4 distilleries. We're home to distributors and bars and mom and pop liquor stores. So this is a bill that matters to my district. These businesses aren't just places where you can buy a beer or get a glass of wine, but these businesses are really the heart of our community. One of the last events I went to before COVID was a fundraiser for the Edison High School, which is the high school in my district's band and art program. And the hottest ticket raffle items were gift certificates and growlers to breweries. And it's great that now every brewery in my district, you will actually be able to buy a growler from. So that's very exciting for so many of my constituents. And these businesses aren't, again, just businesses, but these are also jobs. This is beer and art and a creative economy is the economic engine of my district. So when we're supporting our breweries, we're also supporting our schools, we're supporting their spouses, we're supporting their families, and we're also supporting union members. I'm extremely proud of both Fair State Brewing and Brother Justice Distillery in my district, who are both union craft experiences. So please come tour. Art World is coming up. That's a great time to visit Northeast Minneapolis and sample all of our beer and see a lot of the creative art that's coming. Last week, we also hosted the Craft Brewers Conference, and I want to congratulate Dangerous Man for their bronze award in the Beer World Cup for their double cream coffee dream. And these breweries and these businesses that we're really going to be helping by allowing them to sell to consumers and sell these growlers have touched our district in ways beyond economics. During COVID, they made hand sanitizer. They pivoted their breweries and made hand sanitizer that we all use to kill germs and keep ourselves safe. And they supplied that hand sanitizer free of cost to hospitals and nursing homes and care centers around the state. They offered vaccine incentives. So when I got a vaccine, I got a little chip for free beer. The last time I donated blood at Sociable Cider Works, which is a cider distillery in my district. So these are really community gathering places. They're places that are the heart of the community, and they matter. So thank you for taking this action. Thank you for allowing these small businesses to grow, and thank you for funding these dreams.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, this is not a perfect bill. I voted yes on the new Brindley Amendment because I'm not crazy about the manufacturer and distributor member council. And Chair Stevenson, I've told you that. I think it would be great if we could pull that out. But I want to thank the members of the companies that make alcohol here in the state for lobbying for themselves and getting this piece of legislation to where it is. I have 3 wineries, 3 breweries, and a distillery in my district, and all of them call me a lot. And I think that they have taken an active position in this. They have been very vocal about this. It is for them that I am voting for this bill, and I am voting yes. I am voting for those people who wake up at crazy hours. They go in and they make a beverage that we all enjoy, and they're asking their state to give them some help. So I have authored many of these provisions over time, and I am for them. I am very glad that this is going to be done. So I will be voting green, and thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Bonner.
Thank you, Madam Madam Speaker. I wanted to start with a bit of gratitude and thank Chair Stevenson for his work on this bill. And I know it is a little bit like moving heaven and earth to come to a consensus on a liquor bill. And for that reason, I am so grateful that we were able to come to this agreement. And I'm also really grateful for all of the small businesses that reached out to me personally and spoke to me about their needs during the pandemic and how this impacted those businesses. This bill has some incredibly good things in it. We've seen incredible innovation by our distilleries and our breweries in the types of beverages they've been able to come up with. This defines some of those to better suit the statute to the innovation that we have in that space. We have the equal treatment for all of those wineries who would love to get their product into Minnesota homes. So thank you to Representative Katiza Wattoon for carrying that piece. We've also seen some really great pieces in upgrades around distilleries, of course, freeing the growler cap. We know that that is an incredible draw for so many of these breweries. But the piece that I am most excited about is the piece that really tackles some of the issues that we heard from brewers and small local breweries during the pandemic, who were really struggling. At one time, they were struggling to find growlers. They were struggling to meet the requirements for certain container sizes, and looking at facing, in the middle of a pandemic, spending tens of thousands of dollars to try and meet those requirements. This bill allows them to have more flexibility in those container sizes and to deliver what their customers are asking for. And so for that reason, I am delighted that that provision is in this bill, that consumers can be able to gather in this local watering hole, this gathering space, to be able to enjoy the community, to enjoy the great outdoors, and enjoy a good beverage. And so I want to thank all of the individuals in this bill collectively for their hard work and determination, and to Representative Stevenson for moving heaven and earth to get us here. Thank you so much, and please vote green.
The member from Candy Ojai, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to make comment based off of the comment that Representative Becker-Finn made, that we don't have to listen to lobbyists. I agree, as individual members, we don't have to listen to lobbyists. But the chair of this committee said specifically during Representative Munson's amendment, to where one lobbying group that was actually speaking against one of their own members, he said, unfortunately, and I'm paraphrasing, so I apologize, Representative Stevenson, but that I don't have the words exactly, but unfortunately, because there is someone that came to the table that is speaking against this, we have to have agreement, and so we're going to vote this down. And so what Medelia wants to do, I don't know if all of you know the whole story. I've had the privilege of hearing about it, hearing about Representative Munson, how hard he's fought for his town, that they're totally being rejected on something illogical. Everyone in this room, in this body, would support what Medelia wants to do, but because one lobbying group said you can't do it, it's killed. So this group that's being formed, and that very disturbing memo that I think is now being circulated to a whole lot more people, that basically says, we're going to agree to kill anything that comes before this body, and all it takes is just one to kill something in this bill. I don't understand why it is that we want to have this council, and why this council is so important. I agree with Representative Nash. There are some things I know he's been fighting on to get here, but it's like making a contract with the devil just to get a couple good things out of this. I have no idea why we have to build a bill like this, and I know that when you have compromise, what you have is everyone's a little bit unhappy, is what I always say. But it just seems like, just with the effort to finally say, yes, we do have we have a liquor bill, that we're willing to just compromise so much and give a handful of people what they really want in order for them to agree to just a little bit. I think this is bad policy, members. I totally disagree that we're, in the future, we won't listen to these lobbyists at all, and we'll pass good legislation, because we've seen it time and again that one or two lobbyists can kill a bill. We saw it with Representative Munson's amendment to help one of the towns to open one of these businesses that everyone's talking about, and it's killed because one lobbyist said don't do it. I find that very disturbing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is a tough vote today. There's a lot of good in this bill. There are provisions that I have supported for a long time, particularly when it comes to the brewery I have in my own district. But that's what we do here. We do hard things. We make tough decisions. But at the end of the day, we work in the best interest of Minnesotans. That's our charge. That's our job here. And so I know that there are folks in my own district who will be mad at me when I vote no today. I know that I will not make everyone happy, but as it turns out, I can live with the consequences of knowing that I am doing the right thing. I am happy to live with those consequences, whether it leads to some discomfort in the future for me, whether it leads to uncomfortable conversations. I am happy to take that heat for doing the right thing, because at the end of the day, this bill is bad. This bill, as we noted earlier, furthers the politicization of liquor regulations in Minnesota. This bill codifies a critical piece of this off-book, wink and a nudge agreement between the parties working in their own self-interest. This bill creates a council charged with its own self-interest. This is unprecedented. This is not how we work. It's unprecedented and it's ugly. I should note, it was noted that folks had not seen it. You each have an email in your inbox where you can see these documents from, the email came from Nashri Ovio. That's where the documents are found if you have not yet seen the agreement and if you've not yet seen the letters. But the agreement is there, and I strongly, strongly, strongly urge you to look at that agreement before you vote today. Someone texted me and said, the use of mob boss politics is beneath you. I don't know, maybe it is, but it's accurate. It's accurate. We've never seen anything like this. And we certainly have not put into law special counsels, special access to legislators for folks working in their own self-interest. This is a bad bill. There are good provisions. There are things that I've supported for a long time. But this is a bad bill, members, and I would urge a no vote.
The member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I want to, in the way of full disclosure, let you know that I voted for this bill coming out of the Commerce Committee. And I am not above saying that when I get more information and I learn more information, that my mind can be changed when I get good, solid information. I want to share with you why I am be a no vote today. And I would ask that you also consider these thoughts as you make your decision as well. Number one, the agreement that we've been hearing about, whether it is an inked agreement or whether it is an agreement that is a handshake. I have a problem with that because it says for 5 years, the players to this agreement will not approach the legislature to ask for law changes. They will not approach the legislature. According to the agreement, if legislators approach them, they're supposed to, for lack of a better term, rebuff them because of the agreement. How are members going to be able to learn to help their constituents on a go-forward basis like we're doing right now. If you've been around in this institution for any period of time, you know that the liquor bill and the bill we've got tomorrow, gaming, it's sin week here, sin bin week at the legislature, right? Knows no real political lines of Democrats versus Republicans. It's kind of a mixture of both. Let me tell you why I think that it's a problem for a 5-year agreement. There will be 3 election cycles that will affect this chamber, where those conversations cannot, shall not, and will not happen in accordance with the agreement. That's the 2022 election, 2024 election, and 2026 election. 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. That's how I came to those 3 election cycles. So theoretically, it wouldn't be until January of 2028 that we could be having these conversations. Like I said, I voted for this coming out, and then I started thinking, God dang it anyhow, that's a pretty big pill to swallow. And then I began to think about the fact that this is an agreement that competitors are putting together with one another. And it didn't hit me until I was back in class one day, and I was teaching Chapter 82 of the Minnesota State Statute on licensing law for real estate folks. And by law, in the listing agreement in the state of Minnesota, and by law in a listing agreement, or excuse me, a buyer representation agreement, or a landlord or tenant representation agreement, by statute, bold letters, it must say, fees charged by these individuals are set exclusively and not in conjunction with others or with a membership in a group. And folks, the reason that we have that in our law, and the reason we have that in our documents, is because of the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. I realize I'm starting to sound a little bit like Representative Erdahl giving us a history lesson on the floor today, but nonetheless, it's very valid. What's the Sherman Antitrust Law of 1890? It's what broke up Standard Oil, who had a conglomerate and had an advantage in the marketplace. And from the Sherman Antitrust Law of 1890, it now says competitors shall not collude to set prices nor collude to limit competition. And that's the part that sunk the ball in the hole for me on the green. What happens if we're actually encouraging, or not from the legislature encouraging, but others out there are getting together to create a problem for themselves? I don't want that in our Minnesota legislature. I don't want that in our Minnesota wine, beverage, alcohol industry. And so, again, I have given a lot of thought on this over the last several weeks since I voted yes on this coming out of the committee. I can't support it today. I think some good public policy issues have been brought up here today. I just shared with you my number one concern. I don't want to put us as a state in a situation like that. So, members, thank you for the time and the opportunity to be able to visit with you today.
The author of the bill, Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I started my comments by saying that after a long time, the liquor bill is here, what everyone's been waiting for. And I will close by saying, unfortunately, another thing has come after people have been waiting for it for a while, and that's election year politics. Because we have heard a heavy dose of it today, a heavy dose of name calling and mudslinging on the floor of the House, and that's really unfortunate, because that's not what Minnesotans want. What Minnesotans want is for us to compromise, to act across party lines, to look at ideas based on their merits and not based on partisanship. And guess what? That's what this bill does. This bill is a compromise. It is what our constituents have been asking us to do. It is a very, very bipartisan bill. There are 20 provisions in this bill. 10 of them are authored by Republicans now, and as I mentioned earlier, people like Representative Nash and others have been carrying provisions in this bill that are carried by Democrats in the past. And I just want to mention a couple of them because I think they're deserving of mention of the hard work that people have done. on this bill. You know, Representative Hertas and Representative McDonald both have provisions in the bill. Well, Representative Hertas had a provision in the bill, and then Representative McDonald authored an amendment that actually supplanted it, went even further. But good work on that, on streamlining some regulations affecting small cities. Representative Tice, we worked together to get some amendments in at the last minute relating to racetrack licenses. Representative Swazinski has something related to county fairs, allowing them to have longer licenses. Representative Doubt, the minority leader, has a provision that Chair Becker-Finn called out about limes in a liquor store. Representative O'Driscoll has two provisions in the bill. He has something about allowing 17-year-olds to serve liquor as we're experiencing a wine shortage. He also has a local project for Sauk Rapids. Representative Baker has a provision in the bill. Representative Tice has another provision in the bill. This is a very bipartisan bill. In fact, we adopted a provision from Representative Franson on the floor today to help the city of Alexandria. And so this is a very bipartisan bill that's reflected in the committee votes. Passed out of Commerce 14-1. It passed out of Ways and Means 18-2. I hope we can get a similar bipartisan vote today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill as amended. Members, please vote. Will the clerk please call the names of those members who have not yet voted?
Albright. Albright. Bow. Bow. Burkle.
Burkle, aye.
Burkle, aye. Davids.
David votes no.
Davids, no. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes yes.
Freiberg, aye. Haley. Haley. Hamilton.
Hamilton, no.
Hamilton, no. Houseman.
Houseman, aye.
Houseman, aye. Igo.
Igo, no.
Igo, no. Jurgens. Jurgens, aye. Keel.
Keel, no.
Keel, no. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, aye.
Katiza Watun, aye. Miller.
Miller, no.
Miller, no. Moran.
Aye.
Moran, aye. Morrison.
Morrison, aye.
Morrison, aye. Mueller. Mueller, aye. Olson B.
Olson B, no.
Olson B, no. O'Neill. O'Neill, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Raleigh. Raleigh, aye. Sandsted.
Sandsted, aye.
Sandsted, aye. Schumacher.
Schumacher, no.
Schumacher, no. Thompson.
Yes.
Thompson, aye. Torkelson.
Torkelson, no.
Torkelson, no. Speaker Hortman.
Speaker Hortman, aye.
Speaker Hortman, aye. Albright. Albright, aye. Bowe. Bowe, aye. Haley. Haley, aye.
I go changes from no to yes.
I go changes from no to yes, no to aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 85 ayes and 48 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.